All right, welcome in, everybody. Important Nonsense Podcast, 32 teams in 32 days. Steve Bonham, Neil Smith, Mike Manning. Today we are talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and we don't have to talk about Tyreek Hill, so I'm excited about it. It's going to be great. We are recording.
I was wondering how long it would take for you to throw Tyreek into
instantaneous.
I'm amazed. 23 seconds, Mike.
We are recording this on July 30th, so if anything seems outdated, that would be why. Also, 12-team PPR is our preferred format. So if any of the numbers, projections, anything seems off, that would be the reason. Adjust accordingly. So we will get right into it at the top where there is very little discussion, as we have had a few times at least on this show as we've gone through it. Pat Mahomes entering his first season without Tyreek Hill, but without any doubt, one of the best QBs in the league. I've got him at 7. Neil, you've got him at 6. Mike, you've got him at 4. ECR has him overrated as always. Look, there's nothing wrong with Patrick Mahomes, okay? It's not a hate on Patrick Mahomes, but as I've said, he just falls into that tier, into that category where you either are a running QB or you're not. He runs the ball more than some, but he's not a Konami code guy. He doesn't give you the rushing upside of a Jackson, a Murray, a Hurts, and Allen.
Yeah, he can't get into my tier 1 for that reason. Sorry.
Yeah.
The door is closed on him being in the tier 1. But that's not to say that Patrick Mahomes is bad. It's just for fantasy football purposes, he can't quite get there unless the rushing floor was to come up, and that's never going to happen. Right. My one complaint about Patrick Mahomes, and this is the most minor of nitpicks, if you take his first read away, things get interesting. If you start taking his first reads away, watching him scramble around and make decisions, historically he's gotten a little luckier than your average guy on things like that. He makes some questionable decisions, but it doesn't super matter because the volume is so insanely aggressive that he'll just go right back out there and they're going to let him chuck it around some more. So I'm not overly concerned about it.
I don't want to waste a lot of time on this. Mike, you've got him at 3, or you've got him at 4. Do you want to make an argument for Pat Mahomes in tier 1?
I mean, I consider tier 1 to be just Allen and Jackson, and that's it.
Well, then never mind. We don't have
to
to
never mind.
Yeah.
But in general, Mahomes, so last year he was extremely unlucky. He had more drop passes turned into interceptions last year than he did the rest of his career combined.
Yeah.
So things happen that aren't normal for him. Can you take him down a notch because of the loss of Tyreek Hill, no matter how much you hate him, Steve? He is still a good player in the NFL. So replacing
term, but all right.
replacing Tyreek Hill with MVS and JuJu Smith-Schuster is not ideal.
Sure.
It is a worse receiving core than it was last year, at least with the top tier talent wise. But I think Patrick Mahomes is just that good of a quarterback. I'm happy to have him in the top 5.
Again, this is another thing where I feel like Patrick Mahomes, just from name, just from people knowing who he is and being a good NFL quarterback, gets overdrafted in fantasy football. Where, again, he had that huge breakout season his first year as the full-time starter, his sophomore season when he finished as QB1, right, in 2018. Since then, he has been QB8, QB3, QB4. And that's not by points per game, that's by total points. And when you go to points per game, he even drops further down the list. But to me, to take a guy in the top 5 where really, again, without the rushing, the ceiling just isn't there. He's not going to have to throw it as much because they're going to be winning a majority of games. There have been stretches where he kind of disappears from a fantasy perspective because the team is doing well, running the ball and playing defense against bad teams. So they're going to put up numbers. He's going to have a good year, but right now he's going ADP QB2. Until it bottoms out, like there's never a scenario where I'm going to have Patrick Mahomes on my team, and I know that going into it, and I'm okay with it.
Right. And I'll just
if you at least look at his schedule, this division is going to be a powerhouse, obviously.
Yeah.
These teams, all 4 of them are going to be in competitive games at least, half the season.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause Mahomes to have to throw the ball.
Yep. Running back. So remember when CEH was better than Jonathan Taylor? Good old days.
Week 1
Clyde
of his rookie
Edwards-Helaire. Right. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he is the number one. This is my favorite part. Again, if you aren't following all this, what I'm showing you here is our depth chart from importantnonsense.com. Head on over there. We have all the NFL depth charts updated regularly by Jack. He's fantastic. He does a great job. And using his system here, wherever you see an asterisk, it's a position battle. So he has the entire running back room as a position battle, and he is not wrong because they are all in a committee. They are all fighting for snaps and for time and for playing time. And it's just CEH right now in ADP is running back 26. So he's finally leveled out to an area where I feel okay rostering him on my team because I know he's going to, at best, be a back end RB2. And it's just because of the offense that he plays on. If he gets the pass catching, if he stays healthy, if he gets the usage that he possibly could, then yes, he has the possibility of finishing as RB20. And I'm okay with that as I have him ranked RB25. Neil, you've got him at 26. Mike, you have him at 28. The ECR has him at 29. Like I said, he's 26 in ADP. It's actually a scenario where the running back in Kansas City isn't significantly being overdrafted. And I feel like that says more about CEH than anything else.
Well, we talk about projections every year with Kansas City and how the projections are always inflated because it's Kansas City, and that translates usually to CEH and some of their other skill position players. And I think, to use an actual real stock market analogy, I think we've finally burned off some of the inflation here. We've starved it out. Things are regressing now to what is probably actually real because we have enough data points. And I think some of the CEH stands and truthers, I think they even kind of have had to eat some crow and pull their positions back. So now we're finally to a point where I think, believe it or not, what is this, 3 years in now? CEH is actually fantasy rosterable at a number that makes sense. And I would be okay with it as well. It's fine. And especially as we're going to get into in a moment with the whole backfield actually is getting to a point where there's actually some value here finally for the first time in 3-5 years. So it's we're finally coming out of that inflationary period into a place where these assets are kind of reclassifying to a point where they actually they're starting to make sense.
I mean, if you look at the backfield, it's going to be, does this turn into Tampa Bay's backfield, where it was a position battle coming into the season between Fournette and Ronald Jones, and Fournette stood out. He just took the job. Or is it going to be like the Buffalo Bills have the past few years, where Devin Singletary is a part of it, Zach Moss is a part, it's just a position battle, but nobody takes a stranglehold.
Yeah.
And it's just an aggravation for fantasy. That's the two options it's likely going to be. You're either going to have somebody stand out, whether it be CEH or Ronald Jones, or even Jerick McKinnon, who at least is going to have some value because of his receiving. And I do think that, weirdly enough, because CEH was drafted as a receiving threat, but CEH has a chance to become the one and take this role, or it's going to be a headache.
Yeah, I almost feel dirty about this offense right now because it feels so wrong to be in a position where both of these guys, CEH and Ronald Jones, who for years I've been completely out on, stop overdrafting, you don't want them. Now it's in a position where I'm saying, no, draft those guys because they're going too far down the board. Because I already mentioned CEH is finally in a spot where I feel comfortable. And then Ronald Jones, mentioned, comes over from Tampa Bay. He is not only, to me, the clear-cut number 2 and in a position battle to be the number 1, but he's in a spot where I think he legitimately splits this job. Like the way I have it projected out is 55% CEH, 45% Ronald Jones. That's basically the way I have it going, and I have it ranked accordingly. I have it ranked where Ronald Jones is my RB34, where he has a legitimate shot if something happens to CEH, which has happened the last couple of years. All of a sudden, he steps into the role where Damian Williams and Derek Gore and Darrell Williams have stepped in and been a top 20 running back because they get a huge bulk of workload. Ronald Jones is now in that spot To me, he's my RB34. He's going at 41 in ADP. So you guys are more in line with the ECR and ADP, but to me, for the first time ever, I am slightly higher on Ronald Jones than the general public.
I think John Chansey's ears are ringing somewhere.
Just his eardrums just burst thinking about that. Yeah,
that's insane. I'm fine with Ronald Jones at his relative ECR ADP type of price point area, and it's mostly just because I don't think Ronald Jones is good. This is not a new opinion from me, by the way. I've had this opinion for years. He's a below average NFL running back, and he couldn't get it done in another high powered offense where he got outplayed. Granted, CEH is nowhere near the caliber of player Leonard Fournette is, but we're in a position where even if they gave him all these lovely workload and all this touches, what does it translate to when you're averaging 2.7 to be nice, 2.7 yards per carry, and you can kind of catch, and you're terrible in pass pro, which is another great way to get the vaudeville hook off the field. Get Patrick Mahomes killed once or twice and see how much playing time you actually get. So I'm not super in on this, but given the price point, okay. I'm not willing to go to 34 where Steve is, but given the price point and what's actually real on the paper, yeah. And we're in a weird spot where I could actually get both of them and kind of let that situation resolve itself on my depth chart for my fantasy team. I'd actually be okay with that. Well, I also second what you said, Steve. I feel like I need a shower.
Yeah.
Like this whole conversation is making me feel like I should be wearing a really filthy raincoat.
Mm-hmm.
Like just ugh. Like I just Mike, you're more in line with where I am. Do you have any other thoughts on Ronald Jones?
I mean, I think he has hands of stone.
I agree with that.
Just like Evan Ingram, that style of can't catch. So he can't catch, can't pass block, and I think his upside's limited. It would be because Darrell Williams actually took over receiving work whenever he got when CEH went down.
Yep.
Darrell Williams was the RB.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Gore came in occasionally for expelling him, but Darrell Williams was good in pass protection, was good at receiving, and was the red zone running back. That's great. I think that CEH has a 10 times more plausible outcome of that being his role than Ronald Jones would be. Ronald Jones would just become a committee if CEH went down, which it might be a committee in the first place anyways.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a committee all the way around. It's just how much of that playing time do you actually get? My whole thing is I think RoJo ends up getting a majority of the between the 20s stuff. I think he splits that almost 50-50 with CEH to begin with. But if CEH were to go down, then all of a sudden I think that's mainly Ronald Jones' job. And then again, the upside that I'm talking about is just in 2020, before they finally started to give Fournette the ball at the end of the season, he finished the year as RB21. And he was not used at all in the passing game at that point, like you're talking about with the poor pass protection. So that's really what you're looking for, is almost 1,000 yards rushing, almost 200 rush attempts, because he got a majority of the carries for Tampa Bay. So just that type of involvement in this offense. Do I see it going that way? No, but I feel like he has the upside on this team to actually reach that height, whereas you've got Derek Gore or Jerick McKinnon, who are the other options there that have had some opportunities and have had some flashes, but I think at this point they're too far gone where I don't think they're as involved as Jack's current depth chart may make you believe.
Jerick McKinnon Jones is basically the Mecole Hardman of the backfield.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Jerick McKinnon and Gore are both way down in the 80s as far as rankings, ECR, all that stuff.
Yeah, McKinnon is 75 right now in ADP, and Gore is not even on the page. So
they're those are individuals to know for the waiver wire. If something was to happen, maybe know who they are. I'm not interested in Jerick McKinnon at all. I think Jerick McKinnon is below replacement level. He's below, to use a baseball analogy, he's below the Mendoza line.
Yeah.
And he's getting up there in years. So Gore would be the one that it's like, at least we would know that at least we know from watching him play that he can do the between the tackle stuff pretty well, and he could handle some red zone work. Yeah. So at least there's that as far as like positives to say. McKinnon can kind of catch, but McKinnon's probably going to play 3 games and then wind up on the IR. That's the career of Jerick McKinnon. I hate to be a jerk, but it's true. We've got a lot of data on that. So it's like I'm not interested in either of that. It seems like no one is, to be perfectly honest. I would just know who those individuals are. So that's my one piece of pushback for Jack on having all these asterisks on this page.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, the asterisks are just telling you that it's a position battle. And to me, I think the actual one that pans out of what's listed here is the backup. I think that's the one that actually hits is Ronald Jones ends up as your first and second down back and the goal line back. And CEH is the one you see on third downs as the pass catcher.
Probably.
And nobody has the entire workhorse role. Nobody has enough to be like a top 20 relevant running back. And if an injury happens, still nobody has enough to really jump to those heights, but you're not paying for those heights unless you're reaching on CEH. And in every draft I've been in so far, I'm comfortable taking CEH at 25, but he's never actually made it to me there. There's always somebody that has a higher belief in him than I do and is willing to reach on him a little bit further. Whereas I have way more Ronald Jones shares than I ever have before because I can take him at RB 38, 39 off the board, and I'm slightly ahead of ADP, and I feel okay about it because I feel like there's a decent amount of upside, and he's my third or fourth running back at that point. Let's move on to wide receiver. They signed JuJu Smith-Schuster in the offseason to effectively be the number one question mark. They also signed MVS, which was hilarious. And then they still have McCole Hardman on the team for some reason. Also, they drafted Sky Moore in the second round. Josh Gordon is still technically on the team for the time being. And then Justin Ross, undrafted free agent. He was a guy that we had projected as a top 5 talent wide receiver in the class, but went undrafted because of his injury concerns. Then it turns out he still has a knee injury he's dealing with, and he's currently on the PUP. He's probably going to miss the entire season this season. So just a name to know for the future, but nothing to do for this year. But the main thing is JuJu Smith-Schuster coming over from Pittsburgh, finally got out of that situation, hoping to be healthy, on a 1-year deal after battling injuries in 2 of the past 3 seasons. He has not reached 1,000 yards receiving since his breakout campaign in 2018. Where do we land on JuJu? Because he's theoretically the new number 1 in this offense. It is out of the slot, unlike Tyreek Hill, but it's still technically going to be the target leader, I think we all agree, from the wide receiving perspective. So I've got him at 24, Neil 27, Mike 25. We're all a little bit higher on JuJu than normal, which is it's a little concerning. Again, why are we so positive on the Chiefs this year? Again, I just feel like I need a shower after this whole episode.
I need my filthy raincoat. Like it's.
I think the big thing of us being, so in on players on the Chiefs offense that we normally aren't is because of their cost. We can stomach their cost.
Amen. Finally.
Right? Finally.
Yeah. So,
Mike, you watch JuJu play more than any of us from watching the Steelers as much as you have. So, do you have concerns about like the player? Because I know you've got a lot more data points than probably even Steve or I do, just from watching literally. I'd imagine like every single snap he's taken since 2018.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. The Big Ben situation the past few years has been he's had a noodle arm. His A dot has been so low. JuJu's A dot has subsequently been so low. So if you're looking at player wise, his talent is good. He's a good player. get him a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, obviously it's a huge upgrade over Big Ben. So I think I have good hopes and good expectations of what JuJu will be able to do this season, because Travis Kelce is going to be the lead dog, obviously. But after that, in terms of the receiving game, I see it as JuJu, Sky Moore, and then MVS. I don't want MVS very much at all. I think he's going to be a headache the entire season.
Yep.
And so I see JuJu and Sky Moore if you can get him at a good cost.
Neil, go ahead about JuJu. We'll stick with that one for right now.
Okay, so just as it relates to JuJu, I'm not overly concerned about the re-injury thing. I understand that he's had 2 injuries in the past 3 seasons. I don't view that as making him a chronic injury risk or one of those individuals. He's had some really bad luck. Last year, the injury, especially where the one that finally did it for him when he got blasted in that Denver game. That's just bad luck. And that's not even his fault. Ben Roethlisberger made that happen for him by forcing a ball that really shouldn't have ever been thrown and making JuJu basically stand there and get leveled by an individual that will absolutely destroy you. Like, I believe it was Derek Wolfe who did it, who's now retired. And it's like, yeah, well, that's going to happen. So I'm not overly worried about it as it relates to him getting hurt again. And he's a big upgrade as far as situation, as you pointed out, Mike. So, and they're not afraid to throw the ball in the slot. Like, they're not afraid of that at all. And I'm not even convinced that Juju's going to do all of his work out of the slot. That'll be where he does the vast majority of his work. But I think they'll actually move him around probably a little bit, given how their personnel is actually going to work. So it's a little interesting there. But I think this might be his best chance to getting back over that 1,000-yard hump. And I will just say one last thing. We obviously don't want to read too much into the camp reporting. It's important to follow the camp reporting, but you don't want to base your whole life on it. The thing that I will say is he has been lighting up camp. They've been releasing videos of him making some of these circus catches. He really does appear to be developing a rapport with Mahomes. Mahomes seems to be looking his way early and often. So he made a circus catch earlier this week that was going around on Twitter that it's like, oh my God, he just put that guy into the shadow realm. Like it's impressive from what we've seen so far. And I'll just echo the point that I made at the start of this whole analysis. I think that's what it is, Mike. The inflation on this has been burning off. These assets are getting reclassified to a point where they actually make sense for what you're being asked to invest. And I think also there's a perception in the greater fantasy community that JuJu isn't good and that he is kind of a bust and an injury risk. And so there's a lot of people that feel that way. You don't have to go any further than our own Aiden Ware to talk to somebody who feels that way. And I just don't co-sign it. So that's why I think you're getting a discount, and it's a discount that I'm willing to take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your point, he's only had 2 seasons of his 5 where he's reached 100 targets. In those 2 seasons, he finished as wide receiver 8 and wide receiver 17. So if he can get up to 100 targets, which I think he easily can on this offense, top 20 is certainly in the realm of possibilities. We all have him as a back-end wide receiver 2 or high-end wide receiver 3. And right now in ADP, he's going at wide receiver 34. So it's a significant discount on a Kansas City Chief, which never happens. So enjoy it while you can get it. So the question is, go ahead.
It's narratives clashing.
Yes.
So which narrative is more of or do you believe in, that JuJu was a bad player, or that the KC offense is going to elevate players in terms of ADP and such? Seems like people are more along the lines of they think JuJu is a bad player. I disagree.
100%. And the next part of it is, who is the wide receiver 2, right? So I think we've all agreed that JuJu is the wide receiver 1. Even ECR and ADP would agree that JuJu is the wide receiver 1. The question is, who's the wide receiver 2? Because right now, MVS is going at wide receiver 53, Sky Moore at 55, and McCole Hardman at 59. So they're all clustered right together by each other. But I think we all are pretty much on the same page here, right? It's Sky Moore. I've been saying reach for the sky all off season. So I'm going to continue to say it because this kid looks legitimate. He looked great all through college. He didn't get a lot of hype because of the small school, but I love me some action. So if I can get some Sky Moore, in a decent offense. He was my number 2, I believe, wide receiver in this class. He is legitimate. He is a good player that is going to thrive. And in this offense, when you're really only competing with JuJu in the wide receiver room, I think the sky is the limit for Sky Moore. I'm going to do that so much. Just get ready for it, guys.
He's going to do it so much, we're going to get a copyright claim
the
from
sky
Pixar.
pins sky puns are going to be out of control this whole time. Just wait for it.
Okay, Woody.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody poisoned the water hole.
That's right. There's a snake in his boots.
Jeez. We're going to get copyright flag for all of this now. That's going to
go. Again, I have to adjust my rankings accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I updated the Chiefs was pre-training camp, I think everything. I think beginning of the summer. And I think I had them relatively close. Yeah, I had MVS at 49 and Moore at 55.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I wasn't sure how much they would initially involve him in this, but I'm going to flip that.
I've also been looking at that position group as the further we go into camp, because you come in and it's like, okay, well, he's a rookie. You don't know what's this going to be. They bring in MVS. I don't think MVS is very good. And to Mike's point about him being a headache, well, he probably will be, because it's going to be classic MVS. There's going to be some weeks where he gets a 26 because he caught 2 long passes and one of them at least went into the end zone. It's going to happen. There's going to be other weeks where you get a 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a question of like how much of that is actually going to translate. So at the end of the year, when you're looking back on it, I've got him at wide receiver 50. That's kind of where I think he's going to finish, because you're going to have some big booms and some very low busts. And that's what you're looking at as far as MVS goes. And I don't think that really is going to change just from going from the Packers to here. So Sky is the one I agree. That's the one that's interesting, because that's the one that you've never seen. And that's the one where he could have some kind of consistency here. So that's the one that I've got kind of circled, where it's like, given his relative ADP still, you're still getting a pretty good deal on a Sky Moore. So if he flames out, it's okay. Yeah. You're not investing a whole lot into this. And that's the one that, just because we don't know, and anyone who's telling you they do know is selling you some snake oil, they don't know. It's one of those situations where that's the one that I would get excited about is Sky Moore, because of the, but my concern is that Moore, I've already noticed it is creeping up in terms of ADPs the longer this goes. So when we get to the end of August, when we're actually doing the drafts, it might not be as friendly, but as we sit here and talk about it today, Sky Moore is the one that you would want. MVS, if you're looking for a low end flex, kind of like he's your wide receiver 5 type of deal, that's what I think you should be expecting. And there'll be weeks where you can use it for sure, especially when you get into the buys and things like that. And Mecole Hardman is not relevant. Like we're done with that. That's over. There's too many mouths to feed now. He's proven to be unreliable. I think the coaching staff is kind of moving on from him. I think they telegraphed that to you very loudly by drafting a 2nd round wide receiver. So from my end, that's the way I would order it. I would take Moore. I would take MVS as a boomer bust, low type of flex, my 5th wide receiver. Sure, go for it. You could do worse. And Mecole Hardman matters only if someone gets injured.
Yeah, Hardman has had his chance, and on various occasions hasn't done much with it. I don't expect that to change. It's not like this is and then with MVS, okay, is his situation improved? No. He was with the Packers with Aaron Rodgers.
It's a lateral move. Yeah, it's a lateral move.
So the offense he was with, he had the chance to be the number 2. He wasn't. So I don't expect Patrick Mahomes to make it much different than Aaron Rodgers did. But Sky Moore, as we said, a lot of us have been really high on Sky Moore in the pre-draft process, after the draft, and still now. A lot of what you're seeing in training camp buzz is Sky Moore is looking phenomenal. He's standing out in the offense, and he's just showing that he was worth the selection. So I think sooner rather than later, Sky Moore is going to become the number 2. And we've seen that, obviously, the contract scenarios between all these wide receivers, he could, for dynasty-wise, he could easily become the number 1 by not only the end of the season this year, but at the very least next year. So yeah. I think he is definitely the guy that you want to look at if you aren't getting JuJu and you want a part of this offense. Mm-hmm. His price is great.
And that's what I've said too. Like, I always get flack for the Tyreek Hill stuff, and it's understandable. It's fine. But the main thing is when they brought in MVS, it wasn't to be the Tyreek Hill replacement. It was to be the Demarcus Robinson replacement.
Mhm.
It was to be the guy who occasionally takes that home run touchdown 60 yards, and that's basically his only role in the offense. And my whole argument about Tyreek Hill has always been if you eliminate the touchdown, like if he gets tackled at the 1 every time he catches the ball, he, on average, over the last 2 or 3 seasons, has been about wide receiver 32, 33.
Right.
It's him getting into the end zone that has propelled him up into that top tier category. So who's going to take over those touchdowns? Is it Travis Kelce? Is it JuJu Smith-Schuster? Is it Sky Moore? Someone's going to get a lot of volume and is going to get a decent, significant role. But to me, I think Sky Moore could be easily a wide receiver 3 in that, Tyreek Hill type role where he gets those opportunities and has an opportunity to get volume and potentially touchdowns that can pay off for you for currently a discount. All right. Do we want to talk about McCole Hardman at all?
No. I don't want to talk about anybody else that's on that depth chart. It's the ones you need to know we've covered.
Tight end. Travis Kelce still there, still kicking around. And this is finally back to where we were and the comfort. It's like a warm hug, right? Like just an overdrafted Kansas City Chief. It feels good. This is the safety blanket I've been looking.
There's really only 2. For my end, it's Mahomes and Kelce.
It's Mahomes and Kelce. Kelce right now is going at 14 overall. Tight end 1, a full round ahead of Mark Andrews, which is very interesting. 2 full rounds ahead of Kyle Pitts. Also interesting. Again, Travis Kelce good. Travis Kelce will put up numbers. Travis Kelce is also 32 and is on the back end, and he can't do it forever. So at some point, it's going to hit the fan. When is it? Is it this year? I don't know. Is it worth a second-round pick to find out? I don't think so.
Travis Kelce is basically Derrick Henry of tight ends.
Yeah.
He's going
all he does is produce,
yeah.
And at some point, it's going to go sideways.
Yeah.
So do you want to be holding the bag whenever it happens?
Yeah. Do you want to be in the last year of Todd Gurley? That's basically what we're talking about. Todd Gurley was fantastic for 5 years, half a decade, and then all of a sudden fell off the face of the earth and was droppable halfway through the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it's going to get to that point with Travis Kelce just because tight end is so bad. Like, even if he had a horrendous season, he would still be startable every single week.
You'd have no other options.
Yeah. So I don't think it'll ever be that bad. But like I said, you're talking about a second-round pick. To me, that's way too much. You can't do that. There's no justifying that.
You know my philosophy when it comes to team construction going into 2022. I just don't care about tight end. I won't be spending a second-round pick on like virtually any tight end at all. It doesn't matter, even if it's Mark Andrews. There are too many other skill position players I'd rather deal with, and I'd rather just ferret around in the bargain bin near the end of my draft and just wallpaper it together. Because it's like, yes, I will concede you could net yourself some sort of advantage by actually having a top-end tight end. It is proven. But the problem is that that's 3 guys, so 3 teams might actually get that advantage. And it's so wonky because for what you have to invest, if this is the year that the wheels fall off, I mean, now you're done.
Yeah.
The rest of your team won't be good enough to wallpaper over that. Whereas in my scenario, I mean, that'll be true of realistically, if any of your second-round picks blow up. But in my scenario, you'll have much more of a higher chance of being able to readjust your roster, wallpaper over the hole, and roll it forward, as opposed to trying to deal with like fixing a tight end situation like that. The rest of your team won't be good enough to absorb it. So I don't like that from a roster construction philosophy. And yeah, I agree. It's too much. Second round pick at this point is too much, but it's not going to stop people, Steve. We can sit here and talk about it till we're blue in the face, but this is the reality we're going to live with.
Yeah, I have a similar mentality when it comes to tight end. I don't know. I can't remember a season I have spent anything more than like an 8th round pick on a tight end. And that's just because that's my mentality. I don't think I want to waste roster or a
Waste
higher
is the
draft
key,
pick.
key term
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. I don't want to waste a higher end draft pick on even the possibility of having the tight end one.
Yep.
I'd much rather bargain bin shop in the double digit rounds, grab one or two guys, stream, something along those lines. I just think it's much better in terms of roster construction.
Yep. Defense and kicker, I'm right in line with ADP on both. So I'm right around 15, which is the same ADP for defense. And I'm at 4 on Harrison Butker. He's going 5 in ADP. Again, I will give you the same thing that I gave you for the Broncos when it comes to the defense. There are going to be 6 games a year when you absolutely cannot start the Chiefs defense, which is why they are nothing more than a streamer to me. And then Harrison Butker is going to get his. He's going to have his opportunities. So, I mean, again, if you feel inclined to draft yourself some Harrison Butker, you go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. If he's waiting there for you in the 16th round, he is all yours. Any closing parting thoughts on the Kansas City Chiefs, boys?
Now, with the exception of Mahomes and Kelce, this is the first time in 4 years, Steve, that we haven't had to use this as our example of projection inflation.
Math doesn't work.
Math doesn't work. It actually
the
mostly does
school
work.
system has failed because
Yeah,
the math
no kidding.
doesn't add up.
This actually mostly does. It's just Mahomes and Kelce are too inflated, but everything else for the first time in a long time, actually interesting.
Yeah. Well, like I've said several times, when you want to talk about math not adding up and not working, it's not Kansas City anymore. It's Tampa Bay, and we'll get to that in about a week. So we'll talk about it then. Mike, any closing thoughts, or are you good?
Nope. We've gone through everything, and everything's been stated as I think.
Love it. So we will stay in the AFC West tomorrow and talk about the Los Angeles Chargers. Go Chargers, go. And again, patreon.com/importantnonsense. Shop.importantnonsense.com. Get yourself a glass. I made it all the way through. We're there, people. Until tomorrow, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at importantnonsense.com. Kaboom!